The quiet following that moment was deafening. Fans watching the live couldn't believe what they had just heard. Images, audio, notes, the type of proof that doesn't simply hint at treachery, but reveals it in unequivocal terms. Jim did not display them yet, but just the fact that he indicated he possessed them was enough to send shockwaves across the hip-hop scene. People began scanning the internet, going through previous lives, watching old interviews, attempting to locate any hint that may back up Jim's assertions. It wasn't just rumor anymore. It was a mystery unfolding in real time with Jim Jones at the heart of it. People started coming in, demanding Camron answer, others naming Chrissy in every post they could locate, but from both of them, there was radio silence. There were no comments, denials, or confirmations, and the quiet further exacerbated the intrigue. One fan tweeted, "Why aren't they saying anything?" Another posted, "This became real too quickly. I feel like we're seeing a complete." Jim didn't back down as the relationship fell apart right in front of them. Later that night, he turned to Instagram and posted a dark screen with only one line of white text. "Loyalty above anything, even love within minutes." Blobs took it up. Screenshots of his story were everywhere, people guessing on what it meant. Was he done with Chrissy? Was he done with Cam? And most importantly, this was the beginning of a full-fledged breakdown between two of hip-hop's most legendary individuals behind the scenes. People close to Jim allegedly stated he hadn't been sleeping much and had been pacing, thinking, repeating discussions over and over in his thoughts. And the most agonizing aspect was that he hadn't faced Chrissy openly or totally. According to someone close to the Jim, had simply thrown clues, verbal and figurative, expecting she'd confess. But she never did. Instead, she maintained, pretending everything was normal, which just drove him spiral more. And then came the surprise that no one anticipated coming. A strange anonymous user shared a screen recording from what looked to be a private event cam. And Chrissy was in the same room, standing just a little too near. The audio was low and distorted, but you could definitely hear laughing, and then a moment when Cam leaned in to say something to her. Chrissy's grin stayed too long, the chemistry between them palpable, and the film went viral in minutes. Fans called it the Camp Chrissy clip and analyzed it. Frame after frame, Jim did not explicitly mention the footage, but the following day he went live again. This time his tone was colder, less emotive, and more focused. "Just want the truth," he stated calmly. "No excuses, no lies, just the truth. That's all I ever wanted." He didn't mention mains because he hadn't already told everyone. Understood who he was talking about. He terminated the love suddenly after just 5 minutes, leaving viewers with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, the strain on Chrissy was mounting, and she began turning off comments on her latest postings. She stopped going live, and even more revealing, she didn't show up to a planned public engagement she had been marketing for weeks. Fans saw instantly that concealing someone replied, "She knows Jim ain't playing Camron." On the other hand, continued posting like nothing was going, memes, throwback pics, business, promotions. But if you look carefully, some of his captions began to sound purposeful, such as one in which he wrote, "Sometimes silence is the loudest response." Fans viewed it as a clear strike at Jim, implying Cam was not going to get into the turmoil publicly, but behind closed doors things were boiling. More insiders began speaking out anonymously, and one stated that this wasn't the first time. Tensions have risen between Jim and Cam over trust difficulties. There has always been this underlying struggle between them. Source claimed they brothers, but they've had their conflicts, and a woman being in the midst simply made it worse. And just when things couldn't get much worse, someone close to Chrissy apparently released the text exchange. The conversations weren't graphic, but they indicated a very intimate, friendly tone between her and Cam. Nothing damning, but again, the time and intensity all pointed to something bigger, and Jim, well, he released a cryptic video to the tale of him strolling alone through the city at night with no captions and no music fans, regarded it as an indication that he was distancing himself from everyone. By now, the story had become broader than anybody imagined. It wasn't only about Chrissy and Camron anymore, but about trust betrayal is what occurs when personal relationships and public lives intersect in the most catastrophic manner. Fans were split, some supporting Jim and others arguing he was overreacting without evidence. But one thing was clear: the harm had been done. There were now whispers that Jim had moved out temporarily, and some alleged he was living with a relative in Harlem again. Nothing proved but the fact that those suspicions existed at the outset. Everything people began making timelines comparing. Video from previous years examining instances when Chrissy and Cam had even the tiniest connection. Those who had never cared about Dipset drama were suddenly totally immersed, treating the tale like a reality show happening in real life. And just when everyone thought that during a separate, pre-recorded interview that aired only days after the podcast eruption, Jim did something that sparked everything. When questioned about the condition of loyalty in the business, Jim grinned and shook his head, saying, "I used to believe loyalty was genuine, but now I know better." The reporter attempted to push him, but Jim remained evasive, but the connotation was evident. Meanwhile, Chrissy stayed quiet, with no postings, articles, or appearances, and that silence became the loudest sound in the room. It wasn't denial, nor was it indignation. It was simply nothing. And at times like that, followers started to question whether Quiet signaled guilt, or if she was just overwhelmed waiting for the storm to pass. Regardless, the internet wasn't every hour. Fresh jokes, edits, and ideas filled social media. But there was one moment that truly rattled fans. A leaked audio tape appeared. Reportedly, it was Jim chatting on the phone with someone from his inner circle. In it, his voice was heavy, fatigued, and "I just feel like I'm the last one to know." He stated that everyone else saw it coming except me. That one phrase went viral. Followers utilized it in comments, replies, even auto-tune remixes. It became the devastating soundbite of the whole tale. And even if the truth hadn't been completely exposed, the devastation, undeniable bonds were strained, trust was destroyed, and Jim Jones, the man famed for his strength and commitment, suddenly appeared more human, more vulnerable than ever before. The city watched as fans studied every word and every post. One question hung in the air: would Jim forgive them? Or was this betrayal too deep to ever come back? The internet is on fire after a stunning moment from a recent live podcast sent fans plunging. Jim Jones, clearly distraught and unable to hold back any longer, let free in what's now. While tensions had been simmering behind the scenes for weeks, no one anticipated the Dipset rapper to utterly break down on TV during a Jim revealed a bombshell that left viewers gasping, accusing Chrissy of treachery and hinting to a scandalous night involving none other than Camron. This revelation has sparked off a whirlwind of conjecture over social media, with followers urgently attempting to put together what actually occurred. Was it simply a mistake? Or is there more to this Camron and Chrissy relationship than anybody realized? Emotions running high, hints of secret talks and cryptic posts emerging. Everyone's eager to see what happens next as the podcast episode continues to go viral. Jim's words reverberate over the internet, raw, wounded, and saturated in grief. The treachery he hinted at has awakened old scars, drawn in old pals, and now the whole The hip-hop world is watching, waiting, and wondering just how deep this narrative truly goes. The days that followed were dense with suspense, with no official pronouncements, no explanations, just quiet. In that vacuum, fans produced their own truth threads on social media, evolved into numerous hypotheses. Some said Chrissy had been emotionally distant for months, while others claimed Cam had always nursed a secret passion for no one had the answers. But everyone had views, which just added gasoline to the already flaming fire. Then came an unexpected twist. Behind-the-scenes footage surfaced from a recent music video production when both Camron and Chrissy were apparently present. Nevertheless, was grainy shot from a phone definitely taken without knowledge, but nevertheless showed them holding a private talk off to the side. The body language was personal, not necessarily loving, but too near. Chrissy leaned in as Cam mumbled something. She lightly stroked his arm before walking away. There was no sound or context, but for a public already ripe for scandal, it was enough. Of course, Jim saw it. Later that night, he tweeted a single statement on Twitter: "I was always the last to know." Fans didn't need an explanation. They had already joined the dots within minutes, and last to know was trending not just in hashtags but also altered clips, commentary vids, even fan art. It had become the catchphrase of treachery. Rumors now spread like wildfire. One insider said Jim had hired private investigator weeks ago when he first became suspicious. Another stated he had previously addressed Chrissy off camera and that it didn't go well. Nothing could be proven save the absence of denial. Chrissy's pals apparently attempted to reach out to her, but she wasn't taking calls, and her social media stayed quiet, which was uncommon for someone who regularly posted. Camron, on the other hand, remained unmoved. He posted a series of images from a past tour, beaming with fans, flashing jewelry, and commenting. Ominous captions like "Some tales don't require explanation." People were divided. Was he trolling, dodging, or was this all simply a coincidence? Either way, his failure to refute or defend further intensified behind closed doors. Things were unraveling. Jim's inner group, which was formerly tight and devoted, was breaking. Some stood with him, while others secretly attempted to keep impartial. Not wanting to be caught in the crossfire, one of Jim's lifelong pals allegedly told a blog that he never seen Jim this sad, and that this betrayal impacted him differently since it came from both sides, his lady and in an unexpected appearance. At a charity event, Jim's normally fiery temperament was significantly exhausted. When asked by a fan whether he was all right, he just nodded and continued walking. No words or grin, just a heavy stillness, and then another blow. Someone from Chrissy's past coming forward, a former close friend who hadn't talked to the press in years, and said she had previously observed an unpleasant incident. Chrissy and Cam had a private party in 2018. "I didn't think much of it then," she added, "but looking back now, it all makes sense again. Sturdy, but enough to keep the fire blazing." Jim felt trapped, finally. He broke his quiet again in a new live broadcast, but this time he wasn't ranting or accusing. Instead, he was calm. "I ain't saying names," he started. "Give someone your allegiance and they play you like a fool. It changes you. It doesn't just hurt. It hardens you. I'm not the same guy I was a month ago." Fans watched with their hearts in their throats. Jim looked worn, like a man caring too much. For too long, his voice broke just slightly as he continued. "Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the most." He finished the live after just 6 minutes, with no music or background noise, just him, his words, and a glance that expressed everything that moment. Became a turning moment. Supporters, who had been split, started rallying behind him. Defend Jim at all costs. Trended celebs began like his tweets. Even those who had been quiet started posting mysterious words of support. The atmosphere had transformed. It wasn't simply chatter anymore, but empathy. People saw a guy. Chrissy was allegedly attempting to contact Jim. A person close to the case reported she had sent many SMS and voice notes attempting to cool things down. But Jim wasn't responding since he wasn't ready. Others thought he was stupid when he stated he needed space. Only Jim knew, and he wasn't telling. The press began surrounding websites, produced timelines attempting to identify when the alleged affair may have begun. Prior interviews were examined and scrutinized for signs. Moments where Chrissy beamed Cam just a little too long when Jim's body language seemed wrong. It became a digital probe. Supporters were playing detectives while emotions remained fresh. Cam's quiet started to work against him. What had previously seemed to be indifference now appeared to be avoiding fans. Began demanding answers. "You owe Jim the truth." One tweet read, another stated, "Real guys do not hide. They speak out." But Cam didn't say anything. Instead, he uploaded throwback photo of him and Jim from the early Dipset days with the comment, "Brothers quarrel, but always thicker." It was the first time he recognized the problem indirectly. At the very least, that post generated greater discord. Was it an olive branch? Was he evading or attempting to make peace? Fans were divided on Jim. Notably, he did not interact. He did not repost it, did not like it, and did not respond instead. He shared another enigmatic anecdote, this time with the remark, "Sometimes, the relationship you didn't see that what you believed was unbreakable had already been shattered." And then, out of nowhere, a bombshell email was revealed, supposedly between Chrissy and close friend David months earlier, in which she lamented about feeling emotionally estranged from Jim and acknowledged Cam knows her in ways Jim never did. Although the email was not authenticated, it circulated. Like wildfire, people felt deceived all over again. Even those who had attempted to defend Chrissy started to question everything, and Jim once again decided not to react immediately. However, that night he shared an old tape from a show him and Cam performing on stage, arms around each other, smiling with the text, "Those were the days." That single post was like a funeral for a friendship. Fans read it as a quiet goodbye, farewell to the bomb that once was, as Chrissy's strain grew too great. Late one night, she uploaded a dark screen on her account with the words, "Nobody really knows the whole story, you all. Just saw fragments, no explanation, no follow-up, yet fans were insistent." She flooded her DMs. Her remarks demanded answers. Some expressed pity. Others called her out. The emotions were fierce, split, and somewhere in all. Despite the tumult, one reality remained undeniable. Trust, once destroyed, is practically. It is hard to reconstruct whether or not the affair occurred, whether or not the rumors were overblown. But one thing was clear: Jim felt deceived. Sinks in, it is difficult to undo the harm that has been done, if they would recover. It was still a mystery, and for those who were waiting for developments, it was the most emotional saga they'd seen in a long time. As the tale proceeded to spiral, the tension between Jim Jones, Chrissy, and Camron reached a boiling point. Even long-standing fans didn't see coming. As each passing day, more individuals were, even people who didn't typically follow hip-hop controversy, were gripped by the emotional storm. The growing event had gone beyond entertainment. It seemed personal to many. Jim's tone deteriorated further, as if he were seeing a family come apart in real time. He stopped sharing pictures, ceased promoting his projects, and even canceled 2 planned appearances, according to sources. Someone close to him stated he wasn't eating well, wasn't sleeping well, and had entirely cut off contact with everyone. Except for his mother and a few childhood buddies, one even claimed that he'd been spending his evenings traveling about city, attempting to relieve his mind, blaring old Dipset songs that once meant Chrissy's Quiet continued to speak louder than the words she had ever said. Stood outside a cafe in Harlem, wearing huge sunglasses and a sweatshirt pulled down. The paparazzi managed to get a few hazy images, and although she didn't say anything, her countenance was heavy, as if she were carrying more than just the reports. Rumors circulated that her team had encouraged her to stay quiet until things calmed down, but fans weren't having it. In fact, the conjecture only increased when someone dredged out an old. In an interview from years ago, Chrissy described Cam as relatives now fans. "We were twisting that statement, calling it a code term, claiming it had all been in plain sight the entire time, and then came." The podcast was meant to be a relaxed, low-key edition of Jim's program. Agreed to come months earlier, the hosts were friends. The tone was informal. Yet what occurred live on broadcast will erupt throughout the internet within minutes. Jim came in calm and depressed. He dressed dark. He kept his hood up and scarcely smiled for the first 20 minutes. The discussion was light, discussing music recollections and former performances. But suddenly, the presenter casually remarked about loyalty, citing how the profession may sometimes test friendships. Jim hesitated. For a long time, he leaned forward, removed his spectacles, and gazed directly. "Into the camera, loyalty ain't what it used to be," he remarked in a hushed voice. Stable people will grin in your face and call you brother behind closed doors. Do you filthy? And the worst thing is that you don't even find out from them. Out of the streets, the host grew quiet. No one dared to interrupt Jim. He wasn't shouting or furious on the surface, but there was something in his tone, making it seem colder than if he'd yelled. He added, "Imagine sharing your goals, your home, your heart with someone putting everything together, and then waking up one day to realize it. It was all simply a planned treachery disguised." The conversation area of the podcast became viral, and comments flooded in quicker than the presenter could read. Fans typed things like, "We're talking about Chrissy and Cam, which is sad." While others begged him to explain, Jim did not need to identify names everyone already knew. One of the hosts sought to divert subjects by asking whether there was any prospect of reconciliation. Jim didn't hesitate. "Nah," he responded. "Some things break too deep and I do not want apologies. I want peace. And peace does not come from individuals who lie to me. You kept a straight face." When the live-ended footage of the incident circulated like wildfire, enthusiasts create compilations, response films, and even heartfelt memorials to Jim's dedication and grief once again trended online. Protect Jin at all costs. For the first time, people who had backed Chrissy started to reassess